Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And Baltimore Positive, we have taken a little bye week here after the Super Bowl to sort of recollect ourselves, watch the impeachment. And, around here we would dust off this time of year and we'd be getting ready for baseball, in normal times, non-plague times. And certainly around here, spring training and the Orioles and my heritage in Aparicio and all the other things, the value of baseball cards lately going around for baseball. The Jackie Robinson story comes back to us again and again and again. I wish Alan McCallum were a part of this. I hope that everybody goes out to Owings Mills to the area where the Metro lets off. There's an incredible library, resource center, museum there that Alan's been a big part of. We're going to be talking more about that. But before we do that, I want to welcome in an author who has done a lot of different work. This is going to be a baseball segment, but this man's work's really been about getting to the heart of religious studies, peace and conflict studies, doing books on all sorts of pioneers across time and space. He's up in Harrisburg. He's done a book on Jackie Robinson. We're going to welcome him in. The book is 42 Today, Jackie Robinson and His Legacy. Michael Long joins us here. How are you? I guess we're all snowed in. Kind of weird to be talking about baseball on snowy days in the winter, right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm just looking out the window at my son who's shoveling. So he doesn't look too happy, but I'm doing fine.
Doesn't look like he's going to play two today is what you're telling me, right?
That's right.
Well, to say, hey, why'd you write a book on Jackie Robinson? I've done enough research through all of this and my family's heritage coming from Venezuela and baseball and what it's done for our city. But the Jackie Robinson story, I think when you start to peel back layers of it 60, 70, 80 years later, we're in a time here where you've been writing about race in this country, but most of your adult life as a professor and as an academic and as an author. The Jackie Robinson story comes back like when Hank Aaron dies a couple weeks ago, or Frank Robinson a couple years ago. That Jackie set the trail for all of this, but we're not there yet, are we?
No, we're not. In fact, his legacy is one of unfulfilled dreams, I think. He dreamed of a if we just stick with Major League Baseball, he dreamed of a Major League Baseball that would be racially integrated at all levels, especially the front offices. That certainly hasn't happened. When he left baseball in 56, there's 5.6% of MLB rosters were African American, and now it's up one whole percentage point. So I think Robinson's would be disappointed. But yeah, his legacy is one of unfulfilled dreams, especially in Major League Baseball. Although we can say, Nestor, right, that his legacy has spilled over into the NBA, into the NFL, even the National Hockey League recently.
Well, I'm sure in '68, on the track in Mexico, Jackie Robinson was the one that allowed that to happen. It allowed Jim Brown to play and then walk away and go become an actor. I mean, for anybody at the top of their game, of any of their games, we all point back to Jackie Robinson, which is why almost a century later, you're writing about it, right? And bringing together incredible voices to lend some sort of, dare I say, color, but some depth to this story beyond, well, he was picked on and Branch Rickey and, sort of the cartoon version, the Schoolhouse Rock version that, I got in the 70s and 80s, right?
Yeah, me too. That's what we try to avoid in the book. In fact, those are some of the myths that we try to bust. We try to make sure that we present Robinson as this multi-dimensional figure. I think what we've done is sort of freeze him in 1947, the year he shattered his color barrier in Major League Baseball, right? So in that year, he smiles, he soldiers on nonviolently, he turns the other cheek. Wow, he's shattering this barrier. And for us, it's non-threat. For us in white America, it's non-threatening. That's safe Jackie Robinson. That's a Jackie Robinson we've seen every Jackie Robinson day put on by Major League Baseball. So what we try to do in the book is, as you put it before, we try to peel back the layers and give a different look about Jackie.
Well, let's go through that and what your book's about and accomplish. I've written a couple of books. I have incredible respect for anybody that writes books. I actually signed a couple and took them over to Doug Ware over at State Fair in Dundalk this week. I went over. I had never met as a friend of mine, and I said, man, I'm a method actor. When I start writing a book, I don't do anything else. When the Ravens win a championship, I stop my life for 100 days. I don't shave. I barely eat. I mean, it's almost like a Gandhi thing, where I just get in the room and do it. I know a lot of authors do it a different way. You've done so many books. I mean, to ask you teach how to write a book or the science of how to put it together. I've done it sort of haphazardly as a professional writer, but for you to come up with a concept to do this and then bring other voices into this, give me a little background on the book itself.
So I'll give you a little bit of background on my interest in Jackie Robinson and then build from there. I don't know, maybe a decade ago, I started researching Richard Nixon. I went to the presidential archives in California. And while I was there, an archivist came out and said, "Hey, Mike, have you seen the Jackie Robinson file?" I know, but I'd love to see it. So
Now, you're a baseball guy or a baseball fan?
Here and there.
Here and there. So
I'm a Jackie Robinson fan.
Oh, understood, but you didn't collect baseball cards as a kid and go to the ballpark like 80 times a year like I did. You were a baseball fan.
I did collect baseball cards, and we didn't have enough money to go to the park, but I did here and there.
Understood. Okay, but you like baseball. You watch the World Series every year. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So he brings out this file of thick correspondence between Jackie Robinson and Richard Nixon, which is just incredible. And it's all about politics, civil rights, economics. So I pour through it. I go back to my hotel, and I think I really need to do something about this. So eventually called Rachel Robinson, his widow, and she was so gracious, so generous, and gave me permission to do an early book on Robinson's civil rights letters. So it really built from there. Now, this most recent book, I decided to focus on his multi-dimensions. And when I put out feelers to people, and I put them out to Ken Burns, I put them out to Howard Bryan of ESPN, Kevin Merritt of ESPN, Jonathan Iger wrote a great book on Ali, and the list goes on, George Vesey of the New York Times. And
these are people that had already done their own term paper on Jackie Robinson.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But it was easy because Robinson has such magnetic power even today. I mean, they signed up really easily and really quickly, and I was grateful, still am.
Well, we're joined by Michael Long. He's got a book out. I'm going to pull it up here on my screen share for anybody that wants to have a go at it. You can find it out on the internet anywhere the internet is sold. And it's called 42 Today, Jackie Robinson and His Legacy, a deeper dive, I would say, on Jackie Robinson. You bring up Nixon, and, it forced me to Google it 30 seconds ago, or people are driving around. They're like, well, what's that all about, right? 1968, politics and sports, as much as I've had some in the peanut gallery, Mike, actually telling me to stick to sports the last couple of years. That hasn't gone so well, quite frankly, because I'm an American and my people came here on a boat. But I would say for what Trump has done to get me swimming into politics, because I need to be involved. I have to be involved. The insurrection, I'm watching the impeachment all week, all of that. Yeah. For Jackie Robinson, you get drafted into politics when you're black and want to play baseball in 1947, right? Like, politics becomes part of it, and then it becomes part of your work. And I don't know of the political Jackie Robinson. I think of Jackie smiling and sliding into second base is what I think of, right?
Yeah, right. So you can't tell the story of Jackie Robinson without talking about politics. He took his first deep dive in 1960 when Nixon was running against Kennedy. Rachel supported Kennedy, and Robinson supported Nixon. Why? Well, Nixon helped steer passage of the 1957 Civil Rights Act. He went to Africa and spoke about racial discrimination and so forth, and Robinson was really smitten by Nixon. Believe it or not, they first got together in 1952, and Nixon started talking about a play that he had seen Robinson run when he was at UCLA.
Well, Nixon loved baseball, right? So
Nixon loved
sports. Right,
yeah,
right.
He really did. And, Robinson was at UCLA. He lettered in 4 sports. Nixon considered him one of the greatest athletes in U.S. history. And they just bonded over this. And Robinson campaigns for him. Eventually, he turns on him. But Robinson politically was somebody who said that Black Americans should really suspend their votes and go over with whichever candidate, whichever party best advances Black interests. Sometimes that led him to Hubert Humphrey, sometimes to Nixon, sometimes to Nelson Rockefeller. But yeah,
unlike today, there was lip service to the other side of the aisle. Now it's just brazen, right? Like Nixon flew to Africa and literally, right? Like Nixon was sort of universally thought of as hateful in the aftermath of Watergate, but he tried for a little while, huh? I mean, even Jackie Robinson, it'd be inconceivable that Jackie Robinson could fall on the R side and the Donald Trump side right now. Inconceivable.
Lincoln. When I talk about Robinson,
hey man, it's been a busy month. We've had Hamilton, Lincoln, we've had them all, man.
Robinson does see the GOP as a party of Lincoln, and at this point in his life, there's a group of solid progressive Republicans who are fiscally conservative but liberal, progressive on civil rights, like Nixon in '60, like Nelson Rockefeller, George Romney, Mitt's dad. Robinson loved those guys. Kenneth Keating in New York, he was a senator. Yeah, Robinson steered towards those type of politicians.
All right, Michael Long is here. We're talking about the book and Jackie Robinson. I could go on all day about Jackie, and I've got pictures at Dodger Stadium and quotes and every year. And I don't own a 42 hat, but I own a 21. So shout out to the Clemente Museum on the other side of Pennsylvania.
Hey, absolutely.
And
I got my Boston hat.
there you got your I love it. I was going to put my Aparicio jersey on here, but it's a little wintry today. For your other work and what you do, tell everybody what you do and who you are and the kind of professor you are, because you're not really a sports writer or a baseball book author. You've done a whole lot more nerd work, as I would call it around here, the heavy lifting on politics, right?
Yeah, what I do is I focus mostly on underrepresented voices across America. And so I focus a lot on nonviolent resistance from people who are on the margins of society, focus a lot on politics from the far left, and I suspect that some of your hearers might not like this, but I focus on politics from the far left, and I do the same with economics. And I focus a lot on my life and Black civil rights. I really have, and I'm a white guy, and it's not been easy professionally at points, but wow, I really love the field.
Well, it's coming back, I'll tell you that, right? I mean, your work is very relevant all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Ken Burns, in the foreword to this book 42 today, he makes the case that if we want to honor Robinson today, we need to move beyond Jackie Robinson Day and everybody wears 42, which is great, no doubt. I love that. But we also need to start working with civil rights groups that advance first-class citizenship for underrepresented minorities. And that's Burns's point, which is really fascinating to me. I think that is the way to honor Robinson.
Well, talk about Jackie Robinson's role with Martin Luther King at their point in time where they were both active. And to your point, Jackie may have been on the other side of the political aisle at that point, right? Literally.
Yeah, they were heroes to each other. And at this point, Robinson is sort of like Oprah in American society. He's huge. And so King calls on Robinson to join the movement at points, come down to Birmingham in 63 and Albany, Georgia in 1962. And then he becomes a preliminary speaker at the March on Washington in 1963. And King and Robinson are heroes to each other. They really are. Now, they have a falling out over the Vietnam War. Jack and Rachel had a son, Jackie Jr., who served in the war. He earned a Purple Heart there. And Robinson, who did steer conservative at points, was a big supporter of the Vietnam War. He was fiercely anti-communist, and he was a big supporter of Johnson's execution of the war, and King wasn't. So here's what happened, which is really interesting to me, Nestor. Robinson writes this virulent column against King. And you know what King does? He picks up the phone late at night. This is an era of civility. He picks up the phone late at night. He calls Jackie in Connecticut, and they have this heartfelt conversation where they lay out each other's positions. And Robinson ends that conversation. He writes about it later, and he says, Martin, he called him Martin, Martin didn't convince me of everything, but I came out of that conversation knowing that he's the greatest leader in my life. So, wow. I love those two guys together. They differed, they battled at times, but they really respected each other.
Michael Long is here. The book is a Jackie Robinson, and it's not just a Jackie Robinson life piece. This is bringing things up to date here. All of this is written in real time here this time. 42 today, Jackie Robinson and his legacy, talking about his life and through the eyes of how many authors, Mike?
Oh, I think 11.
11.
I think I would know, but I don't.
Well, 11's a good number. That was my cousin's jersey, so I'm fine with that. Bringing this full circle to what we're witnessing in the country right now on race and Biden in, Trump out, who knows where impeachment goes and who knows what the future is. We're in the middle of a plague in baseball. I have spent the last 30 years, my 30th year on radio here in Baltimore, talking about a baseball team that moved into a new ballpark. They just had a 2-year extension. You mentioned race in baseball and blacks in baseball, and I talk so much about the museum that's right here in Baltimore. That's fantastic. Right out in Owings Mills is part of our metro system here. When you get off, it's a library. It's a library. You can eat there. You can park there. It's free. Go out, check it out. It's awesome. But baseball for me over 30 years, having worked on the inside for a good period of time, 21 years. Angelos took my press pass in 2006. I have not been in the clubhouse much in the last 14 years, but I was there at that period of time. The Latin players are far more, and the foreign players are far more of the outsiders than the black players in baseball, where there aren't that many. And, over the course of my adulthood, I'm 52 now, I don't know that 15-year-old African-Americans in inner cities even think about baseball to play, because baseball has done such a poor job. Baseball's done a poor job of recruiting a 52-year-old Latin guy that lives 2 blocks away from the ballpark, whose last name is Aparicio, right? Like, they've done nothing but spit upon me. They've not recruited me at all. They've told me to stay away. I can't imagine for people that it just doesn't come to them because a football or a basketball or here a lacrosse stick in Baltimore or a soccer ball or anything else that could come between you and a catcher's mitt. And, hey, kid, go stand out in left field. We'll hit you one. That baseball's in trouble. You know what I mean? And I've witnessed this and I've seen this through my lifetime. And so when I hear about race in baseball, it's a part of it. But the arrogance at the top of baseball and the poor leadership for all of my lifetime to do anything but soak fans for money, it does come back to they should have taken better care of African-American athletes, play all of that Jackie Robinson set up. Baseball has failed miserably to do anything other than print money, which was the goal, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Robinson story and then come forward if I can. George Vesey makes the point in the book that Robinson transformed Major League Baseball on the diamond. How did he do that? Vesey did, and he might overstate the point a little bit. Maybe you can help me out here. He says when runners take that extra wide turn on first base, and when they lead off the base a long distance, when they dance between the plates, when they do the hard slide, when they steal home plate, that's Jackie Robinson ball. That's what George Vesey says. What Robinson did was really inject a lot of the Negro Leagues ball into Major League Baseball.
Action, movement.
Action and movement. And Vesey says
the threat of speed.
Right. And he said this has been squelched recently by analytics in baseball. So the game isn't
There's too much risk in speed.
Right. It's not that interesting to watch anymore.
No, it's painful. It really is. I mean, from someone that's been in and out of it all of my life, when I go into it now, I sit there and I stare and I'm like, oh my God, this isn't just not what I used to watch. It is a far inferior product as a consumer or a viewer, and my time is more valuable than it's ever been. And I understand the history. I collected the baseball cards. I can compare Manny Machado to George Brett or Mike Schmidt or Brooks Robinson or Pie Traynor, for crying out loud. But that doesn't mean at 52 I want to give them money and go sit and watch it 162 nights. And I can't imagine if I were a 12-year-old African-American kid hanging out 4 miles north of where I live right now, that I would be drawn to it. Or, quite frankly, Caucasian, Latin, whatever you want, that you would be drawn to it, because I don't know that they are truly in a recruitment mode. You know what I mean? I don't know that baseball is truly trying to recruit young people. I think they're, or black people or Latin people. I think they're trying to recruit people that'll pay for it. And that's been my experience in Baltimore.
No, I think that's probably more than fair, especially when Angelos was there.
Still there. We think.
Still there.
We're not sure.
Okay.
It's kind of like Willy Wonka. No one comes in, no one goes out, really.
Yeah.
Tommy's Friday night. I'll be doing it online. I'll wear a mask. Come on by. Here you go. No, but
Robin,
in all sincerity, the baseball and race, and one of the things people would say, well, African Americans in America have given up on baseball. They're not a part of it, despite Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and go down the line. I'll agree with that, but I don't necessarily think it's just a black thing or just a baseball thing or just a Baltimore thing. I think it's an American thing right now.
It is. And, Major League Baseball just announced that it hired Ken Griffey Jr. to help on issues of diversity. And I think that's a great step. I really do. But they need a lot more than Ken Griffey to make changes. I mean, that's a systemic issue that you're talking about. So 9 days before he died, Robinson goes to the World Series and he throws out a ceremonial pitch. And he stands there. He wasn't going to do this. He wasn't going to do this because he was so upset with Major League Baseball because it hadn't made significant changes on this issue of race. So he wasn't going to do it. And then he eventually gets talked into it. He's standing there and in front of a nationally televised office. He said he's happy to be here, but I'll be a lot happier, he says, when I look down third baseline. This is when coaches were on third baseline. When I look down third baseline and I see a black-faced coach in baseball. That dream, sure, it came alive here and there, but that dream, that big dream, never happened.
Well, even just in the last 10 or 15 years with Dusty Baker and Frank Robinson at the end. And, you know,
Yeah.
I can name black managers, and there aren't many. You know what I mean? We can go through a handful and, you know, talk about, Frank and Cito Gaston. We can go through all that, but and it doesn't feel like that's even in the pipeline. And in football, there's a legitimate, you know, that I'll save that for next week because we're going to talk about that as well. I talked to Marvin Lewis about it last week and Jack Del Rio and a bunch of other people as well. So you can go check that out at Baltimore Positive. But for baseball, I don't want to say I've given up hope, but I'm 52. I don't think I'm going to go back to baseball. And my last name's Aparicio. And part of it is all of it, but part of it is a recruitment part to say what's going to make me interested in it again. And I don't know that it has a Jackie Robinson. I don't know that Ken Griffey or anyone can fill that void. I mean, they got A-Rod out in front of it. Cal Ripken's here in Baltimore. There are plenty of heroes for baseball.
Yeah.
There's a nice resource to pull from. Mike Trout's on the field right now, right? But the question is how they manage it. And part of that, quite frankly, is what the Dodgers and what the Hall of Fame does to try to manage the legacies of all the baseball players. And I think that's where steroids and Kurt Schilling and, I mean, they can't even get their Hall of Fame right? They can't even figure out how to honor their players.
Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir on this one.
Well, I get fired up when I talk baseball on a winter's day because I do miss the ebb and flow. It was such an awesome part, I think, of all of our lives if you loved baseball. Michael Long's here. What's your next book on? I mean, because it probably won't be baseball, right? Like you sort of go in and out of all sorts of civil rights issues, right?
Yeah, you know, I don't think I have it handy, but next month I have a book coming out called Kids on the March. It's about kids who have led protests throughout U.S. history. Wow. Starting with the 1903 march in Philadelphia of textile kids, and then going the whole way up to Black Lives Matter.
And I guess the Parkland part of that and the fallout of all of that as well, yes?
Yeah. Yep, that's included in the book too. Yeah.
Mike, good luck with your book, man. I love people that write books. I like people to come on the show to tell me great stories like you today. I can't begin to tell you. When this began, I thought we'd be talking about Richard Nixon, but we did, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Nestor.
Anything get me going tricky dick this early in the morning with a cup of Rofo coffee. I appreciate it. Mike, take care of yourself. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Nestor. Take
care.
I'm
in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but joining across the border on the other side of the Hereford zone, just north, Michael Long. The book, 42 Today, and Jackie Robinson and his legacy. You can find that out anywhere books are sold. You can find us anywhere Baltimore Positive is sold. You can get us out on Stitcher and Apple and Google, and you can get the app, and you can find us at BaltimorePositive.com and our podcast audio vault. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore Positive.